Do 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 do. Ooh, getting yelled at, huh? Getting yelled at for not sending this. Oh yeah, they're right. I didn't. Hold the phone, folks. Hold the phone. Something about the Trump era where so much happens. Just so much happens. It's so hard to keep track of everything that's going on because so much goes on. Things change in the blink of an eye. Lot to talk about today. All right, if peeps are ready to go here, let's roll. Scam information on everywhere. What about you? All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. Of course, the best place to follow us is always on Locals. Peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, let's do like an end of the week kind of review. All right, we've got a lot going on here if you think about it. We're trying to analyze trends that have been going on and are going on. And there's all happening on this like backdrop behind us, right? And the media is involved in this massive scandal. They went all in on this. Let's scare the hell out of the country because of tariff strategy. JP Morgan and, the Atlanta Fed, all of them kind of followed their lead. I mean, and you know what? You can't even blame some of the JP Morgan. I can blame. JP Morgan's just full of crap. I can blame them. But others, you have CBO coming out with their nonsense. Anytime there's an effort to reform, make any significant reforms to public policy. And, for a while there, they successfully did cause fear in the electorate, but something's going on here. And what that something is that the American public is kind of just on to them more now. So it doesn't cause this complete and total breakdown of public confidence in Donald Trump's ability to be the president. They've been down this road before. And if you remember our last registered voter economic confidence index, we foreshadowed this week's economic news. People told us, you know what? I have concerns about right now, current business conditions. But in truth, the labor market's pretty good. It's getting better. The cost of certain things like gas and certain groceries, certainly better under Biden. Shelter, I mean, there's still problem childs out there, right? But overall, we're like, and you know what? Even more so, 6 months down the road, I think we're going to be all right. And now we have a new slew of economic data that pretty much backs up what the voters told us, because, of course, the voter knows before you see it in other economic indicators. The voters know. We're talking to them right then and there. And then the polling of that gauge is released a few days later. The job market data lags a month. Consumer spending lags a month. And the forecast can do nothing but follow I mean, there are leading indicators, but the forecast can do nothing. It's not their fault. They can do nothing but follow the lagging indicators. And what we got today was actually really good news. But it's just another hit for them. I really do see this as another hit for the media. Who's already struggling with this whole. I mean, Jake Tapper's book tour is probably the worst thing that could have happened because Laura and I were talking about this morning. In some measure, they're getting away with it. They not really meaning Jake Tapper, but the people he's going and doing these tours with, they're getting away with it. And we got a clip to show you what I'm talking about. They put on this facade and they put on their best pretentious demeanor, and they act as if this was some kind of thing. You know what? Looks like those right-wing guys were just right? But in truth, public's not looking at it and seeing it that way. Anyway, just hang tight on that for a second. Let's take a look at my favorite here, which is always the Econo Day calendar. We could go back a little bit, right? I mean, we did have that GDP report, which was improved, all right, and beat the consensus. I told you it improved when we did get the second and third estimates. The advanced estimate, the data that we had that makes up the advanced estimate, was going to be not distorted, but an incomplete picture, as it always is, but let's put it this way, disproportionately filled with things that would be more harmful to the gauge. And as we got more information, that would change. And of course, the personal consumption expenditures is one of them. All right. But when we look at this, we could look at corporate profits as well. That's also important. But look at jobless claims. I mean, they were a little bit higher than expected, a little bit more than expected, but still, you really do want jobless claims around 200,000. So it's higher than you want, but is what it is. The initial change was still down 2K. So anyway, moving over to the PMI, we talked about that a little bit earlier. The manufacturing indexes actually did come in better than expected. And then we got consumer sentiment, which beat the consensus and increased. Now back into growth territory. This is the final report for May. Again, a lot of these revisions came in and they were more positive. All right. That's not even more what I'm talking about here. Look at personal income and outlays, which again is the consumption index, right? How much personal consumption, consumer spending. Look at the personal income month over month. And 0.8% gain month over month. Year over year, actually, you'd have to go into the report to get that. Actually, my bad. And we can if you want, but this was a much, bigger gain than it was previously reported. And then, of course, it was a little bit higher than the prior revision, but it was more than twice the consensus forecast, nearly 3 times the consensus forecast. It ranged from a low of 0.2 to a high of 0.4. It came in double the high, folks. Double the high. If people were panicked out of their minds, you would not see that. You just wouldn't. Trading goods, which of course we're going to be looking at, this was a huge narrowing from the previous and way better than the consensus. Now we're starting to get closer to the narrowed trade deficit that we saw under the first Trump administration before he really did everything that he did this administration to pull the trigger on those tariffs and try to balance the trade deficit. The truth is, nobody in Washington really wants the trade in goods to be balanced. Nobody does. They're full of crap when they say that. We have long given that up in exchange for cheaper goods and worse jobs. That was the deal of the globalism era. So during the Trump administration, when we saw exports rise, imports decline, people started to wig out a little bit. All right. But he never went this far. All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. It is very important, but we talked about J.P. Morgan's revision to GDP, and now here's the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, which is not. Look, take it with a grain. Sometimes they're right on the money, sometimes they're way off. All right, but what is noteworthy is the increase in the nowcast. The GDP now model estimate for real GDP growth, which is seasonally adjusted annual rate in the second quarter of 2025, is 3.8%. 3.8%. That's up from 2.2 on May 27th. After recent releases from the U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, we just went over some of them. The nowcast of the contribution of net exports to second quarter real GDP increased from negative 0.64 percentage points to positive 1.45 percentage points, while the nowcast of second quarter and second quarter real personal consumption expenditures growth and second quarter real gross to private domestic investment growth declined from 3.7 and negative 0.2 respectively to 3.3% and negative 1.4. So again, what most people don't realize when we talk about this is that trade imbalance is always a net drain on GDP. And the deal is that the deal has always been, or not has always been, this is a product of the modern era, the end of history era, right? The deal was we suffer those trade imbalances and we get cheap goods and we are a 2/3 or more spender economy, meaning consumer spending makes up the lion's share of GDP. And if that trade deficit narrows, the prevailing theory has always been that consumer spending will decline considerably because the price of goods is going to go up. Oh my God, tariff. Americans aren't going to spend. They're not going to innovate, blah, 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 blah. And no one's ever really put that to the test. It's basically just a theory at this point, as if the country cannot turn from a service sector, consumer spending economy to a goods producing, still strong consumer spending economy. There's the blue chip consensus. You can see this forecast now is way ahead. This is a significant increase. All right. A significant increase. So, I mean, it's positive news. Got to hold it. Got to make it happen. But it is positive considering all these forecasts were running around doing their best Chicken Little, telling us all that the sky was falling. 2:15, I don't want to spend too much time on it because I do want to leave some time for questions. Laura always gives me a hard time when we don't have enough time to go through questions. So get your questions in. I am going to leave sufficient time for it. I did see a bunch of questions about the Elon Musk report. We'll get to it. We will. I imagine I got my own thing to say about it. I'm not sure any of us know how that's going to play out yet, but I will say this. The longer this continues, the less Americans will care about the sideshow. The sideshow. What's the sideshow? Everything the media wants to talk about other than what is important to the American public. The constant sideshow. And it used to be bombshell, but it's not anymore because nobody really cares what they're saying. It's the truth. Not nobody. It's a dwindling amount. All right. With that in mind, we can definitely pop this off. I don't think there's much more to say about this. This is positive economic news. And I don't think 3 weeks ago anybody would have told you that we would see these numbers. And they went on and on last month. For the last month and a half, they went on and on saying, well, you got to give it time. It's a lagging indicator. Now, there has been some adjustments on forecasts for inflation. JP Morgan did inch their forecast a little bit higher on inflation. It's not even that significant. It's really not, which is noteworthy to me because I have been polling tariffs and trade for a very, very long time. And if you don't load the question or tank the question, and you ask people in a manner, just gets right to the heart of it. Look, Are you willing to suffer a little bit of pain, to pay a little bit higher prices? If it's short to midterm, if it means better long-term jobs, better long-term trade deals, higher wages. And people have always told us they were. Now, people is the difference between what people will tell you and then what they actually do. There's no doubt. I concede that. And I think we saw a lot of that in the first Trump administration. I just think we're dealing with a different thing, a different situation now, a different beast. I really do. Polling one of the least Republican friendly areas in the Fox River Valley in Wisconsin right now. And according to some of these other polls, for instance, you would expect Donald Trump's approval rating to be in the tank, his favorability to be in the tank. It's not. So if it's not in the most, or I wouldn't say the most Democratic voting area in that Democratic voting location in that area, I wouldn't say that, but it has been trending Democrat, and Republicans have been struggling with it badly, except for Donald Trump, who seems to poll these areas really poorly, but then actually perform rather strong when it comes to the vote. But I see it myself when I poll. He looks like he's going to poll poorly, and he always overperforms. Like, wouldn't we see this if it was the case? And if this is that kind of an area where you would expect that kind of volatility and that kind of like negativity to come back at him, there's always going to be this, 40+% number that says they strongly disapprove of him, right? If it's not like that in an area like this, then what's it like everywhere else? And you got to wonder. There are parts in the Mid-Atlantic, there are areas in the Mid-Atlantic states where this matters just as much as it does in the Rust Belt. Parts of New Jersey. And then you see a poll recently come out. These people, when they took that poll from Emerson, they already knew. They were already feeling the way that these new economic indicators suggest they feel. Consumer sentiment was already rebounding. They were already spending. They were already much more confident about the future. So, their poll. My point is, you see these polls come out, and you have to wonder. He probably is tied in New Jersey. He's probably about even. And if this continues, he will be extremely popular. I think everybody needs to accept this, like right now. Reagan went through the same thing. Man, he was buried for the first 2 years. The economy was not doing well. His main promise was to get the economy back on track. He did this massive tax cut, which, of course, Democrats phrased as a tax cut for the wealthy, blah, blah, blah. 2 years later, it kicks in, or less than 2 years later. But by the time we get to that point, it's kicked in. And his numbers go through the moon. He goes on then to crush Walter Mondale. When Walter Mondale decided he was going to run for president, he decided he was going to run against a president with a 30-something% approval rating. But he didn't get that. He got the economic savior, Ronald Reagan, because over that time, Reagan's policies started to take effect and bore fruit. We live in a different media era these days. There's no doubt about it. But I think that they certainly have a grip on a certain population. But it is not the way it used to be. All right. 220. And that's because of some of these cultural issues too. And I think we are going to have time. There's just one clip that I do want to play because there's so many things going on. We could pick 2 or 3 main issues. We're like, all right, this is the predominant driver behind the shift to Donald Trump, less so Republicans, but to the right in general. And then there are a bunch of these like peripheral issues. And just this overall feeling that some areas of our society and our culture have completely gone off the rails. But stay tuned on that. Stay tuned. before we leave this whole concept of media, the media is embroiled in this scandal. And if this guy would just get off his stupid book tour, maybe they would have half a chance to deal with it. But I mean, every time a clip hits X, every time it hits cable or network news, it completely backfires. And I'm wondering if this is like a sales strategy or something. Let me buy this book just to see what the hell is in it. I don't know. But Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson are doing anybody any favors in their industry. Let's watch this.
It's true that it was a cover up in plain sight.
Oh, sorry. Let me just tee this up. That's Barry Weiss. I've always found Barry to be very fair. We followed each other for a while. We've had interactions. I've always found her to be, fair. You may remember she got a little bit of excommunicado, right? This is the FP. Honestly, it's her jam. All right, so just teed it up and give it to you before we go out there.
Do you think that's true, that it was a cover-up in plain sight?
I think there is something to that, but our reporting, and I think you'll see our reporting, is that, there's a reason why the debate was still so shocking. Like, even to Nelly, who you said was, like, early on this, right?
Yes.
It was still shocking how bad it had gotten behind the scenes.
It was shocking to the Trump people.
I think two things about it were shocking. One, how bad it was, plain, that's just like the text. But I think the meta text of why it was so shocking was all of the people that were waved off as conspiracy theorist, right-wing fever swamp people were completely right.
We're 100% right.
They were completely right. And the people who, even now, you still hope they're telling the truth. Like, maybe we can trust some of what they say.
We have to stop right there, because I will tell you right now, and I'll let her finish. This is the charade. This is the facade, right? Here comes the pretentious, right? This is what I'm talking about. Barry knows full well. Come on, Barry, you know full well. They're full of crap. All of this is a load. It wasn't that right-wingers were right and like left-wingers or whatever were supposed. You ever notice they never labeled them and everybody else? You got the right-wingers who were just, these, what did she call them? Swamp fever, whatever. They were right. And everybody else. Wait, whoa. Was it everybody else? Everybody but the left-wing lunatics in media, the hacks in corporate media, openly acknowledged that the dude was senile. They weren't disagreeing and denying it because they didn't see the evidence of it or they didn't know. And it was just like, well, some group, that right-wing fringe group of people, they were actually right. They got it. No, that fringe group in corporate big media who carries water for the Democratic Party, that is their actual profession, not to be a journalist. They covered it up. Jake Tapper, I'm not going to go get it all over again, folks. If you watch the show, you've read the emails yourself. You could go to WikiLeaks right now to their database and type Jake Tapper. Do it. You will see communications between his team at CNN, along with Wolf Blitzer and others, with the Democratic Party, colluding, which is where that word initially came from, colluding with the DNC and the Clinton campaign to railroad Republicans like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, the frontrunners, party leaders, the movement leaders. This is what they do. He didn't get it wrong. He got it exactly right. When his master called him on the phone, he picked it up and said, "Yes, sir, may I have another?" This is such a load. He is a professional water carrier. This is what he does. Just like when he got the call from Team Obama, George Clooney's writing an op-ed, "This is what we need you to do." He did it. He played a pivotal role lying to the country about Joe Biden being senile, and then he played a pivotal role in stabbing Joe Biden in the back and throwing him out, the back door like a piece of gutter trash. And by the way, Joe, you'd expect that from the media people, and you'd expect that from your so-called colleagues in politics. Who you shouldn't expect it from is your power-hungry piece of shit wife, who should have never allowed you to be abused like that. It's humiliating as a man, but it's offensive as a husband. My wife would never use me like that. I don't care what you offered her. And vice versa. But I digress. Jake didn't get it wrong. The media didn't get it wrong. They did what they intended to do, which is lie to the public until it became clear that they couldn't lie anymore. And when the new and latest drugs didn't get the guy through an hour and a half of debate, they sacrificed him on the altar of leftism. Because anybody is anybody. You know, like you're watching a movie, it's like main character buff. With leftism, nobody has a main character buff. Even Barack Obama at some point, I guess. Maybe Barack Obama is main. I'll take arguments for maybe Barack Obama as a main character buff. Because why? He's the first. He's there. He's a symbol for them. He's a trophy. He's the first black president. That's it. That's all. He wasn't a great president. In fact, he was a fairly horrible president. People who have been around the White House for a while, you know, what is the job of a president? He was terrible at it. Joe Biden did more of the normal presidency stuff than Barack Obama. He went down to the Senate when something needed to be passed and rammed through. There was a debt ceiling fight. There was a continuing resolution. There was an extension to make sure the government was funded. There was this, getting the votes for Obamacare, the American Reinvestment Act. That was Joe Biden. I'm not kidding. Nobody respected Barack Obama, and that he wasn't one of them for long. Joe Biden was one of them for 3.5 decades at that point. But it doesn't matter. He wasn't a good president. It doesn't matter. He is the first black president. He is their trophy. Their trophy. So maybe he has main character buff. Maybe. Depends. I'm sure there's somebody else they'd like to sacrifice before they go to him first. And they'll do that before they can have to throw him on the pyre. You know what I mean? All right, let's go back to Barry.
They were this profoundly wrong. I think that is like the deeper layer of the shock.
Definitely, we all should, in retrospect, looking back on it, have been much more easy, much more quick to label what we saw, what it seemed. But I think there also was, regardless of ideological issues, I think there was also just a reluctance to say he seems addled. He seems like maybe he can't do the job, when you have the entire infrastructure of a political party saying, what are you talking about? He seems fine to us, and we have meetings with him. One of the stories in our in the book is when at the same time, around the same time that Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes, these great reporters with the Wall Street Journal, right around the time that they break their story and are garroted by the Democratic Party and by journalists and by media critics and by journalism professors and this whole industry of people who claim to be nonpartisan assessors of truth, but that I'm sure you, me, and Alex would maybe go through the list and take issue with how much that's true.
Hold on, let me just tell you. If I said the word garrote, you would probably understand. You would know more. But he means strangled. They were strangled. All right. A garrote is a the mob. You know, the garrote, the wire behind the neck. Sometimes a rope. Often it's a wire. Quite messy, right? But what he means is they were strangulated by the Democratic Party. Anyone who printed anything bad or had a question that they wanted to raise, they would strangle them out, you know? What a load of crap. What a little load of crap. As if they were like some victims or something. And we're not a victim here. They're a willing conspirator in the worst scandal in American media history. You lied to the country about the president being senile. And a bunch of unqualified millennials were running around, running the country, unelected, unaccountable, doing whatever the hell they wanted, using an auto pen in a way that more and more people are outwardly saying is frankly illegal. And I hope they get prosecuted for it. I do. I hope they get prosecuted. By the way, one of these people was the very same person who was the source of a Fox News story in the summer before the 2020 election, who was cheerleading for the number of body bags to increase before the election. Sure, it still looks close now, but wait until there's 180, 200,000 body bags. That's what we're waiting for. Ron Klein. It was you. You were the source of that story. You know it. Ironclad source. I know that to be a fact. That was Ron Klein who said that. He gets promoted for his role in the Biden cover-up, even during the campaign, by being the chief of staff. I honestly don't know which one's worse. Russia collusion or the Biden cover-up. I don't know. Because they knowingly put a woman that the country did not like a Joe Biden heartbeat away from the presidency, when they knew full well the country would not like that, didn't want it. Almost 45% told us in 2020 that they were very uncomfortable with the fact that Kamala Harris would be next in the line of succession. And that if the truth, but at that time, still many people did not believe yet that Joe Biden was senile. Over the years of his presidency, almost everyone except for Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents, and maybe some true independents, but that number is so small to begin with, would come to realize they were lied to later during the debate. But over the years, it just became very clear. Again, everyone, we're supposed to believe that it wasn't clear to these people because they would be watched, garroted out of the loop. Come on, man. It would be, come on, man. Stop it. It's just it's insulting.
That was traumatizing for them. I mean, I'm assessing it from my point of view, but that had to have been traumatizing for them. At the same time that they were doing that report, and this is in the book, there's another reporter with a national outlet who is getting the same information. Behind the scenes, he's a mess. He can't answer questions. He's losing train of thought. And Steve Ricchetti, the Biden aide, calls this reporter and basically says, I'm in the meetings. He's great. And the message that this reporter gets is, if you do this story, I'm going to go on the record and say you're a liar. And this is a youngish reporter who didn't feel confident enough to go forward.
Who cares? How many times has it happened to the Trump administration? And they do it anyway. They told the country that the president was a Russian agent. Give me a break. You think they give a crap about this? Only because why? They're a Democrat? They don't want to be ostracized, maybe from the social circles. Maybe I'll buy that for $1. Maybe they'll pick up the phone and try to hurt their career. That shouldn't even be a question. That shows you that alone. Even if that was true, that is not a good enough excuse. All that is evidence that this is an incestuous relationship with the media, one that is completely corrupted, because they're afraid of retribution from one party, but not the other. That just shows a corrupt industry. The industry's corrupted. That's not an excuse. It's not an explanation. And I'll buy that for some. I'm not going to buy it for anybody who worked at CNN or anybody who worked in any of the alphabets. That's ludicrous. These people have been on this beat for years, folks. They don't have eyes. They don't have ears. Peter Doocy used to ask these questions, and not only was he attacked and threatened by, all of Fox News was to be shut out of the White House press briefings, but he still was there. The media themselves, as we played in a clip, with their smug ass attitude, would sit there and look at Peter Doocy like he was the leper. And they would write stories about him, hit pieces about their fellow press corps member. Folks, that's not fear of being garroted. That's corruption.
And I think that probably happened a lot more than we know. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that White Houses intimidate people. Reporters are human. Reporters want to be able to have careers. Nobody likes being attacked. I mean, I spent the last, I'm looking at Barry Weiss saying nobody likes to be attacked. It's not pleasant.
Oh, poor Jake. Nobody likes to be attacked. What about all the attacks on those who were telling the truth that Jake leveled? Do we have to pull back up the clip of Laura Trump? She was right. The only one who has held this guy to account so far on this entire tour, to the point where they can truly call themselves a journalist, is Megyn Kelly. She's the only one who and I give him, I don't know that I give him credit, but it does say something that he actually showed up for that interview, which he knew would obviously be tough. But the bottom line is, she's the only one who conducted an interview without operating under this bogus pretense that somehow they didn't know. That's a load of horse shit, and everybody knows it. I mean, come on. You're just not fooling anybody anymore. It's a load of horse shit. All right, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let me see if I can actually get you a thing for it, and then that'd actually be pretty cool. Yeah, here we go again. All right, when we come back, we'll go over one more clip, and then we'll just lay out I'll try to just do as many questions as I can. Oh, 2 more clips. Sorry, 2. Don't forget, you're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. Links to the description, links to everything are in the description below, including the Public Polling Project and the sponsor we're going to hear from right now. But of course, the best place to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. We gave the first round of voter analysis modeling, which is only available to Locals. That is for Pennsylvania. There will be more. So if you want to see them and check them out, you definitely got to go to peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. And YouTube, by the way, if you go into the community section and you want to grab a code to be able to make that transition, you can do that there. All right. There's a code just for YouTube. All right. In the community section on YouTube, I'm talking about. All right, folks. Last day of the week here, so I want to tell you all about it. All right. 1775 is still giving away free starter kits loaded with premium coffee and gear. While coffee prices have gone up over the years, 1775 is out here launching freebies, but it's only live while quantities last. You'll get 3 bags of coffee, 2 16 ounces of your choice, dark or medium, plus their longevity blend, which is infused with the anti-aging CAAKG, clinically proven to reduce biological age. Translation, it turns out the Fountain of Youth comes in a 16 ounce and doesn't taste like kale. You cover 2 bags, 1775 covers the rest. That's a full 16-ounce bag of coffee, plus premium gear, the cool-ass matte black tumbler, the frother, the golden scoop, and reusable K-cup filter. Whole bean, ground, or pods, whatever, your call. Start your day with coffee that backs your values, clears your head, fires you up, and makes you feel like yourself again. By the way, they back people who also try to keep it real with you, like me and others. Go to 1775coffee.com/TPP for the People's Pundit. Again, the link is in the description. 1775coffee.com/TPP. And grab your free starter kit before all these guys over here realize what a terrible idea business-wise, it is. All right. Let's do two more. All right. Some of those cultural things we were telling you about, and then we'll talk about the setup to briefly, after the Trump era and what you can expect, because there's going to be a lot of bad endorsements from Donald Trump. There already has been. Lindsey Graham, give me a break. Right? Just why? So you can get something through the Senate committee? Who gives a shit, man? Honestly. I mean, you could do that by threatening them as well, Mr. President. I mean, honestly, that would be the route that I would go myself. But eventually, voters, I think, are going to start thinking about the future over what Donald Trump prefers or says he prefers. And they may not care again. I have to just no mile way to put it. He might kill the power of his endorsement until again when it matters, which will be the situation Reagan found himself in 1988. Reagan never got along with his vice president in the beginning, right? Reaganomics, the vice president called voodoo economics. He was from a completely different part of the Rockefeller wing of the Republican Party. They did not like Reagan. Reagan made a series of bad endorsements, which ended his presidency with the worst of all being Herbert Walker Bush. He came out. Herbert Walker Bush was down 16 points at the caucus. It was ugly. They, of course, ran the Willie Horton strategy. That certainly worked. He's weak on crime. He's a progressive from Massachusetts. He's this liberal, rich white guy from Massachusetts. It worked. But it also certainly didn't hurt. And you can see it in the polling. That America's favorite president at the time went out to the convention floor, went to the microphone on that stage and said, give him a chance. Unfortunately, he blew it. And he went out there and he said, read my lips, no new taxes. And the first thing he did was remove his own freaking tax cuts from the Reagan era, or at least parts of them. And that was a broken promise nobody could have saved him from. Not the Iraq War and not Ronald Reagan, who then, again, senile in his own right, partly by this point. It's very sad if you go back and watch the video. Go back and watch the video of Reagan's 92 convention speech when he says, one more time, guys, give him another chance. And everybody was like, no. Trump's going to find himself in that position with many of these endorsements. They're going to say, I love you, Mr. President, but no. Now, when it comes to who his successor is, that may be a different story. I was listening to this episode, and I thought he said something noteworthy. It did make its round on social media, so I thought I'd grab it. Here's Mark Halperin talking about this very thing.
Talk to you about is the challenge I see for the Democrats in making sure that as they get to late 2026 after the midterms and into the presidential year, that they've got a good chance to win. Because I think right now, again, on the current trajectory, they'll have a problem. 2028 will be a year, assuming Donald Trump serves out his full term, with no incumbent. And in the modern era, which I mark from when President Reagan was in office, we've had 4 cycles without an incumbent. 1988, 2000, 2008, and 2016. Mm-hmm. In all those cycles, we had a different dynamic. What we've never had before on either side is a vice president like J.D. Vance. Now, in 3 of those years, we did have vice presidents who were interested in running for president. George H.W. Bush in 88, Al Gore in 2000, and Joe Biden in 2016. Okay? And in those cases, those vice presidents did not receive overwhelming support from their presidential, from the president who they served with. It's a big deal because presidents can put their thumb on the scale. This president can really put his thumb on the scale. If, as I expect, Donald Trump endorses J.D. Vance, that in Republican politics since Trump became the king of the party has been dispositive. It's rare for Trump to endorse a candidate who doesn't win. But it's more than just Trump's expected support. J.D. Vance has enormous advantages because we've never seen a vice president like this.
Never. I think Mark Halperin is right. I think J.D. Vance is at this moment As long as Trump doesn't decide, hey guys, your favorite president's going to run again, which I know people would love. I think there'd be people who would, take Trump until the Roosevelt day. You know what I mean? But in all likelihood, Trump trolls the media. He's not serious. And I think he is going to want to put the future of his family and his legacy when it comes to the White House and the control over the executive branch in the hands of someone he implicitly trusts. All right. Which is somebody like JD Vance and somebody who he believes shares his views. I once told you guys that some of the strongest Trump supporters out there, the most reliable Trump voters, are actually not people who pretended to be on the Trump train from the very beginning. All right. And they're certainly not those who were not and then pivoted to being Trump water carriers when it was clear he was going to win. All right. And that includes in both cases, Ted Cruz and with Ron DeSantis. Because, of course, Ron DeSantis was run by the same people who ran Ted Cruz. Right? They convinced Ron to kill his career the same way they convinced Ted Cruz to give away every every aspiration he ever had to be president of the United States. They misread the room. That's something they're very good at doing. They make millions of dollars doing it, by the way. Millions. Disgusting amounts of money these people make to be wrong. This is different. JD has, I would argue, there are going to be a lot of losses for Trump if what I am hearing is going on actually does go on. Trump's going to suffer a lot of losses. But that's going to be at the congressional and senatorial level. When it comes to the presidential level and who will take over MAGA as an executive, I don't think there's anybody else at this moment. Now, we're a long way away. But if JD Vance performs, continues to articulate the Trump agenda as strongly as he does, as America First movement, as strongly as he does, precisely because he is one of those converts, not one of those fakers, then I think it's a shoo-in. Now, he's got a long way to go with general election voters, but he can get there. It's so very early. Typically, vice presidents don't make good nominees, successful nominees. We will see if that continues. I suspect that JD Vance will have the best chance to break that cycle of history than any vice president we have seen, especially in the modern era. Okay. Herbert Walker Bush skated by the first time, and he skated by he clobbered Dukakis. Dukakis was a horrible candidate, but also Ronald Reagan got behind him, full-throated support. Even after Reagan suffered some midterm defeats, quite a few. All right. So I would agree with Halpern. I think that's important as to where we're going. All right. Last one, which deals with the social stuff, and then we'll get to your questions. I can already see that there are, looks like a bunch on YouTube. I don't know about locals. I haven't checked locals yet. Okay. Or Rumble. I haven't checked Rumble either. Okay. We'll get there. Maybe there won't be that much. It'll be kind of good. We can all, get out of here with a decent understanding of why I'm talking about the things we're talking about. And I see mad comments about Elon Musk. But I would agree with Tim in the YouTube chat that JD Vance is a much, much stronger VP as a figure, his role, and his responsibility for articulating MAHA, right? All of the facets of new MAGA, right? And he's doing it well. He's doing it well. All right, let's back to these cultural things too, which is going to be so key to whether or not, I don't know whether Democrats can pivot back, even if they want to. They've been basically trained to be what they are. I don't want to use that word, rhymes with train washed, but it's true. Their voters get cranked out of these institutions. Their brains are certainly molded to view the world a certain way. And the problem is the era of them being, the future is over because that group is not growing. And more people are starting to catch on that it may not be the best course for them to go to some of these very expensive schools, rack up a ton of debt, all to get some garbage woke education that they're not going to be able to use and to see the world in a twisted and distorted manner, which puts you firmly in the category with like 1 in 5 of the population. You are grossly in the minority. What's the appeal to that? All right, so we'll go to our favorite buddy we love to pick on, which is Harry Enton. But in all seriousness, check this out.
I think going into this, I think a lot of Americans thought that higher ed needed a nice kick in the rear end. What am I talking about here? Well, why don't we take a look at high confidence in higher education?
Tony Soprano.
You go back a decade ago, 57% of Americans had high confidence in higher education. Look at where we are now. That number has plummeted as of last year, down to 36%. We're talking about a 36-point drop among Republicans specifically. Get this, 68% of Americans said that higher education was on the wrong track. So it's a question of whether or not people agree with Trump's tactics, but they definitely agree with him on the idea that there is a problem with higher ed overall.
One thing you've heard from President Trump and many Republican allies for quite some time is accusing colleges and universities across the country of not being a friendly place for conservatives, if you will. How do the American public feel?
Yeah, so, do colleges have a liberal bias? I think that's really the question here. And what we see in polling after polling after polling is that the plurality say yes.
It's more than a plurality. Ipsos is one of the worst polls out there, and the Ipsos Knowledge Panel is trash. Sorry, true story.
Overall, look at that. 45% of Americans overall agree with the idea that colleges have a liberal bias. Just 24% disagree with that idea.
Yeah.
Look among Republicans. Hello, 67% of Republicans agree that colleges have a liberal bias. This is why Donald Trump is so emphatic and so wanting to take on this fight, because he knows that Republicans hate universities, hate the administrations, believe they have a liberal bias, and in fact, the plurality of Americans overall agree with the idea, agree with Donald Trump, that colleges are in fact a place where bias reigns.
On President Trump targeting international students, are you seeing an impact of this? I mean, obviously it's early on, but so far?
Yeah, there's definitely been an impact on it. What are we talking about? So webpage views for university courses from potential students abroad, right? This is from study portals. Get this, it is down 50% from potential international students from January 5th to the end of April. So a lot of potential international students who might be saying, hey, in the past I might want to come saying, no, at this particular point, maybe I'm going to look elsewhere. Maybe I'm going to look at the United Kingdom, for example, because in the United States, we don't feel welcome.
Good.
It's great to see you, Harry. Thank
I
you
mean,
so much.
honestly, good. What's it done for us? I mean, I wonder if somebody could do a study on that. Like, what's the net benefit? I mean, I know they'd come up with their normal crap, but there's been a lot of damage done from these programs. We had in the University of Florida, we had a massive problem with Chinese spies. Everybody knows it. The Justice Department knew it. Massive problem. That's just a place like the University of Florida. All right, let's get to it. Speaking of the vanguard of media and government apparatchiks trying to torpedo Donald Trump's economy, poll, the improving consumer sentiment could be even better if Powell wasn't purposely refusing to adjust the Fed rates. The Fed's a one-trick pony crew with inflation. We all know that. But I think it's like, without a doubt, crystal clear that the Fed is always willing to be accommodating to Democratic presidents and fight, and are certainly more adversarial to Republican presidents. And that was true during the Bush era as well. But this is a whole new level. And I'm not a huge fan of the Fed, keeping rates at nothing forever. So like eventually that had to happen. But if there was, potential concern over a recession, as they said there was, the way that there, the way that there was during the Trump era for Joe Biden, they would have reacted. I think that's clear. I'll also say this, crew. if they do lower interest rates, I'm selling the house I just built like 3.5 years ago and cashing in and doing something else. Like, the only reason why I wouldn't cash in on it now is because the rates are higher and I'd wind up paying higher rate I didn't get any younger during that 3.5 year period. So I would do that. You're looking at another 30 year. I mean, I'm 43 years old. So it would have to be something better and much more attractive. But if he did, I would take that jump in a heartbeat while I'm still 43 and I would cash in. But they're not going to do that unless they're absolutely forced to do it. They're just not. So we'll see what Trump does with that, by the way. Which one of the Democrats gave Jake the order to write the book? Just 5 on Obama. Yeah, I'll put 5 on Obama. I think Obama is the one, from what I understand and what I have heard, Obama was the one, not Kamala Harris, who basically put the dagger in Joe Biden's back. He just thought he was going to be able to maneuver for his replacement, and he didn't, because he was out playing and having fun in his vineyard while Kamala Harris made phone calls all day for 2 days, 3 days straight. And I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 54 phone calls that did it. He was furious, apparently, when he found out, and that's why he leaked in the New York Post that she can't win, right? I don't know who he had in mind. Very clearly, to me, they think they're grooming Pete Buttigieg, but we'll see. Long way away. Maybe most people would say like it was his wife, but I don't think so. At least I don't think that's a shoo-in, because anyone who knows Michelle Obama knows that she is a lazy piece of that woman doesn't like to work for nothing. For nothing. She is a lazy woman and has always been, apparently. All right. Emperor Soft Turtle. Biden cover-up is worse. They propped up a Biden, got him in the office. We literally had an oligarchy for 4 years. They started multiple wars and nearly a World War III. I tend to agree with Emperor. I do. I tend to think this one's actually worse, Emperor, because that we were ruled by an oligarchy. That's exactly what happened. Look at who he put around him, or he, right, put around him in the White House. It was a bunch of massive donors or people with that are the bridge to those donors in their field. And that included some fossil fuel people. I mean, do you really want to be green, or do you just want your friends to get all the fossil fuel, right? I think that's a legitimate question when it comes to the Biden family. Same thing with Ukraine, by the way. The idea that, they're green, but yet they pumped billions into Ukraine's shale industry. And that's what the ruling class bet on. You look at the treasuries, right? And you can tell that they absolutely did. It put it all on red when it came to Ukraine. And here we are now. So, yeah, I think it is worse. I do. I really do. They took a senile old man who almost assuredly they knew was dying before, all right, and made him president. And it was an empty suit presidency that they could exploit and in more than influence. They ran the show. It was beyond influence, really. That's a great point, because I do think it's probably worse, How long do you think the Dems' new Sam outreach to men will last before it derails itself? Not long, Eric. Do you remember White Dudes for Harris? How'd that go? The fact of the matter is, Democrats are not a party of men, or even certainly not a man's man. They are the party of boba eating, chai sipping, latte boys. And that's it. They're not. You show me an alpha male who's a Democrat these days. Do it. Go find a high profile alpha male and I don't mean one who plays one on TV, because let me let you in on a little secret. They're full of shit. They're acting. Find me a legit one, a real one, and come back and speak to me on it. This is a good point Peppers makes. Vance needs a job like COVID had Pence. Kamala had the border. He needs to be visible and succeed. Then he will be able to carry the torch with the voters. I also tend to agree with Peppers. I think that he needs a purpose. He's found one in this trade, going around and speaking to these people and making them understand why they have the trade policy they have is certainly a big thing. But I do feel like he could have a more public role in something. Now, danger, though, Peppers, is that he doesn't do good in it, right? Maybe forces outside of his control, right? or maybe a sabotage. I know we're running out of time. When does Trump have to go full Andrew Jackson on the courts? And how do 3 judges determine a couple 100,000 dead from fentanyl is not an emergency? This certainly looked to be gamed out, Blaine. And the Trump administration basically said, and they're going to go through it, do different avenues of authority. So in one way, they can comply with the accord, and people would have to take it, from there. The court is out of control, Blaine. The court is totally out of control. They are an absolute threat to our self-governing society. You cannot have people now in 2 decades twice vote for the guy who wants to throw everybody out who's here illegally and restructure our economy. You cannot just have people in black roads decide every time the voter does something they don't like that they could just undo it. Of course, the president has the authority to deport people. Of course, the president actually does have authority to levy these tariffs. I mean, my God. I mean, I wonder what Jefferson would have to say about this. You're going to need the Chief Justice's permission before I levy a tax on somebody? Come on. And for those of you who don't know, what they're saying is that Congress was right about him not having the authority and blah, blah, blah. So Trump said, fine, I won't cite that authority. I'm still doing it. Policy's not changing. I'm just going to cite a different authority next time you ask me about it. So we'll see. All right. Let me end it with, geez, Blondie, why is Jim Jordan such a, what really happened to him? Well, we did all see the stories about Jordan years ago. I don't know if they threatened to bring that stuff up. I honestly, I haven't sat down and talked with him about that. Like, certainly not in confidence, but there are a lot of people who think Jim Jordan pulled a 180. And the last but not least question, which candidate is the GOP's best hope in California 13? Why David Giglio would be. He was going to be on today, but he was traveling. It looks like he's going to form an exploratory committee. You have like this one guy is fake MAGA that they're running in there. This is solely for the purpose of if David were to get in the race, they're going to try to peel MAGA votes away from him, which would be a challenge. There's no doubt. But this guy is a violator of Barnes's cardinal rule of don't run somebody in an area where they can't pronounce their name. That's true. I would not do it either. Who the hell is this guy? He just all of a sudden decided he's MAGA and he's going to be on President Trump's side. I saw this before in the Valley. I've seen this over and over again out of the Valley. They're full of crap. The guy has a plan. And his job is to pull votes if David runs away from David so Lopez could sneak by, who then would go on to lose in a general. And for all these people who always go up to him and myself and others when we're talking about this and say, well, how are you going to win Hispanics in California 13 without being Hispanic? The same way the nearly 80-year-old rich billionaire from Queens outran both Adam Gray and John Duarte in that district. And oh, by the way, Mike Garcia himself in his. So with that in mind, that's the end of the show. Man, it's already 3:04. All right, listen, if you like the videos, don't forget to like them and share them far and wide. All right, as always, we thank you so much for watching. Let me get rid of that. Yep. Link in the description for all the, well, there's only one today, but for 1775, get that before it runs out. And of course, the Public Polling Project, as always, contribute what you can, share it far and wide. We don't want to wait till the last minute to fund it. So that's why I put it up there super early so we can have the full quarter to do it. If we do get to a point where we're, hitting these like fundraising boosts, I will certainly increase the frequency of it. But we're nowhere near that yet. And you might notice that the goal is a little less this time because last time it was overlapping goals. All right. So this is good news. All right. So do what you can. But of course, we're on Truth. We're on Getter. We're on X. We're on Rumble. We're on YouTube. But the best place to follow us is on Locals, especially if you want those voter file analysis. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. I hope you all have a great weekend. I'm certainly going to try my best to do the same, although I am busy with polling. And then book club. Don't forget, where are we? Bang. Nations and Identities, Vincent Pecora on Book Club, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Don't miss it. If you are a member on YouTube or a supporter on Locals, you can join the book club, and I really implore you to do it because it's such a relevant conversation to this day. All right, y'all. Deuces as always. I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching Inside the Know.